What's poppin'? What's poppin'? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of Life According to Rick. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everybody had an amazing week. So, usually, when I'm recording, it's already Friday morning, and, it's very much giving Friday vibes and ready for the weekend. But right now, it is currently 1 a.m., and had a long day at work. I'm still a little sleep deprived from last night because I had a rough night with Harlem, but you know, I'm here. I'm showing up, because y'all matter and I have to put out the episode. So, we put it in that work. But let me tell y'all about last Friday. So Mr. Harlem had a sweetheart dance at school, and I went with him. He chose me to go with him instead of mom. And no shade to mom because he's a mama's boy for sure, but that right there hit different because he definitely wanted me to be there and experience that moment with him. And it was a vibe, like just a bunch of kids running around, and they had music, and they had like a little photo booth, with like a Valentine's theme and whatnot. So it was a good vibe, and it was special, to be there with him, and really had a good time. It's those moments like that that really leave that imprint on your child because you showed up, and he's 3 years old, right? So he may not remember it, but at least for that point in time, that I was there with him, he just kept saying, "Oh, daddy, you went with me to my sweetheart dance." And just the smile on his face was all worth it. So definitely glad that I went with him. Then on Sunday, we had the big game, the Super Bowl, the Seahawks and the Pats. Um, it was a very, very tight game defensively. Obviously, the Seahawks had the bigger edge, you know what I'm saying, over New England. So, the best team won, right? And then obviously the halftime show, Benito Bowl, definitely felt like they played the game around a Bad Bunny concert. The energy was high, you know what I'm saying? The performance was dope. Everybody was hyped. So, it was exciting to see. But I will address the elephant in the room. Um the Super Bowl commercials. Normally every year the Super Bowl commercials, you know, they they hit, right? You got like the movie trailers for the big movies coming out for the summer, and it just lacked big time. There was no trailer for, Avengers Doomsday, which I was hoping to see a trailer for that cuz I'm super excited for that movie to drop in December. And, Spider-Man Brand New Day, that's coming out in July. We still haven't gotten a trailer for that, but I guess they're trying to keep it on the wraps and not give out too much to get people to anticipate for when those movies do drop. So now let's fast forward a little bit to this past Wednesday because as I had mentioned before, I do work hybrid, right? So most days, like maybe 2 days out of the week, right? I'm in the office and then the rest, I'm working from home, right? So it can get challenging for the simple fact that there are certain days that I work late. So by the time Harlem gets home, right? My wife will try to like keep him distracted, keep him downstairs, and they were downstairs setting up, like Valentine's Day goodies because he's having, like a Valentine's Day pajama day at school later on today. Um, so I don't know exactly what happened because, I'm working, I'm on the phone, taking calls or whatever, and all I can hear is Harlem like running up the stairs, right? And I'm trying to be professional and trying to not let the person that I'm on the phone with hear this little boy tweaking, knocking on the door. And so I finished the call and I like opened the door and I overreacted because, I kind of felt like embarrassed that, you know, I'm working and, I'm like, this person probably heard him, in the background and, obviously the calls are recorded. So you don't want that to come back to you and they'll be like, well, we heard the kid in the background and blah blah blah, right? So long story short, I kind of like spazzed on him, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of made the situation a little bit worse. And so now he's on 10, right? He's crying, screaming, and I felt bad afterwards, you know what I'm saying? Cuz after I clocked out, I went and I checked on him and I kind of took over cuz my wife was, watching him while I was working, but I was like, "Come on, let's go upstairs." I sat him on his bed and I kind of like got eye level with him. I apologized to him for screaming and I was explaining to him like, daddy's working. You can't be knocking on the door because I have to work. And so I kind of have this thing with him now where like, I tell him touch your nose if you understand and he'll touch his nose, which, gives me that reassurance that he's understanding what we're explaining to him. So we're working on, basically explaining to him what he did wrong and why we got upset with him at that point in time. So I did some breathing exercises with him. I was like, take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, right? And he was chill afterwards. Gave him a tubby, you know what I'm saying? Then I laid with him and till he fell asleep, right? And that's it's just one of those things where I'm working with him and I had to like catch myself again because we're human, right? And at that point in time, I was just like, no, we can't be having that. Like, I'm working. But despite all of that, you know, at the end, I was able to, get him regulated and, calm down. And I'm not going to lie, that right there, that's a win. Because, seeing him choose me for the dance last Friday and then, being able to repair after that meltdown, that's basically parenthood in a nutshell. And today was a even better day. I worked till 6:30, right? And then when I clocked out, I went downstairs. We spent some time together. We were playing with him, my wife and I, and he was in a good mood. And then we were like, all right, it's time to go upstairs and get ready to settle down. Give him a bath, got his PJs on, and then, we laid down, we watched YouTube videos till he crashed out. And then my wife and I watched a comedy special. We had some laughs, you know what I'm saying? Got some alone time with her, you know what I'm saying, before I got on here to record. So, and I even got the baby monitor sitting right here in front of me. So if I pause at any moment, just know my little gremlin might be trying to clock back in. So before we get into the core of this episode, Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So what do you guys have planned? Restaurants are going to be hella busy. If you ain't made a reservation yet, good luck. And I hope you get your flowers early, because if not, you're going to be staring at empty buckets at the store. So don't say I ain't warn you. Just remember, Valentine's Day is a Hallmark holiday. I feel like every day is Valentine's Day for the people that you love. So, you know, don't be trying to show out just one day out of the year, to show people that you love them. You know what I'm saying? We gotta give them their flowers every day. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean literally give them flowers, but just show them that love and appreciation. Feel me? So now to get into the heart of this episode, parent guilt. It doesn't stop with toddlers. With my older kids, guilt hits when I don't check in enough. My daughter, she'll message me and she'll be like, Dad, I miss you. I don't want to come off cold, because I do miss them. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, those are my babies, no matter how old they are. So I don't want them to think that, because they're no longer living at home, that I'm done with them. And you know what's real? That little Ricky and Kiana, they've both hit me up on separate occasions, just to thank me for everything that I did for them, even though we didn't have much. So that right there, that's why I keep showing up. It's proof that all the small moments matter. You know what I'm saying? And with my older kids, like, I definitely have that parent guilt because I feel like, you know, when I got them, right, that I was raising them by myself, it was, like I said, a very dark time for me, being a single father, raising two kids. It was rough. I was upset. I was dealing with mental health, even though at that point in time I didn't think that I was dealing with, mental health, you know what I'm saying? But I really was, you know what I'm saying? A lot of trauma, you know, um, just a bunch of stuff internally, right? That they didn't really deserve. But I did do my best, and those text messages and them reaching out to me is just proof that I did do the best that I could, and that's what speaks volumes. And you know what I'm saying, and it means a lot to me that even at their age, they still see me like their hero, like, you know they I love you, Dad, I appreciate you. And it's like it really touches me, you know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that I was able to do what I you know do what I did, right, to and being there for them when it mattered the most. And the biggest parent guilt, Layla, my youngest daughter in New York. I barely see her. Sometimes I feel like an absent father, not by choice and not because I don't love her, but because she lives far away. It's not one of those things where she lives on the other side of town or she's like a 30, 40 minute drive away. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's doable. You know what I'm saying? New York is like 4 hours away, and it's not like I can take frequent trips like that. You know what I'm saying? So that has been very rough for me. Um, Especially now at this age where she's at, she's gonna be 17. She's already a junior in high school. And I definitely feel like I've missed a lot of her life. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I check in with her, she responds, but it's not consistent, and it's tough. Um, the distance definitely makes you question yourself, and I definitely, you know, remind her, constantly that I do love her and that I'm always there for her, and she knows it, she always tells me that she loves me and, she does wish things were different and I know that it affects her. But, I do wish that things were or could have been different. But all I can keep doing is, just trying to show up. But here's the truth. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need present parents. Parents who can repair, who can show up, who can laugh with them, even after a meltdown. And that's the same lesson I learned with Harlem this week. You know, repair matters more than perfection. Even in the chaos, there's balance and humor. Like the other day, me and Harlem did Reese's peanut butter and jelly pretzel reel. Reese's has these new peanut butter and jelly filled pretzels that came out. They're limited edition, and he's very much like me. He loves peanut butter and jelly. When I was a kid, I used to go ham on a PB&J sandwich, and he's very much the same, just like me. So it was fun, to see him, interacting and just participating. Like at his age, it's funny. Like he loves the camera, so it's definitely my mini me. And the pretzels were fire. So if you get a chance, definitely try them out because I thought they was good. If you love PB&J and you like pretzels, definitely a go. So try them out when you get a chance. Also Harlem, he mirrors me a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like the way that I dress, he wants to dress like me. It's funny because I wear earrings. I don't wear them all the time, but like if I get dressed up, and I'm going out, I put my earrings on, and he's like, "I want to wear my earrings too, Daddy," and I'm like, "Nah, buddy, you still young. You can't be wearing earrings yet." So he's definitely my broke best friend. You know, he doesn't pay bills, but he definitely runs his house. Super crazy. You know, and the nose tap check-ins. Toddler life teaching emotional intelligence. You know what I'm saying? We trying to get him to understand, express his feelings, like I've noticed that he is getting better with that. Like he'll tell us like I have big feelings, I feel sad or I'll feel mad, and I'll ask him, I'm like, Puppy, what's wrong? Like why you upset? And he may try to explain it and he be like in his little toddler talk, mile a minute. You really don't understand, but you give him that reassurance that he's good. And it's moments like that, they remind me why the guilt, the chaos, and the late nights is definitely worth it. So yeah, late nights, big feelings, baby monitor on standby. Parent guilt hits all of us. It's okay to snap. It's okay to feel guilty. What truly matters is repair, presence, and love. So, like the great Rocky Balboa says, one punch at a time, one round at a time. Show up, laugh, repair, love. That's all that counts. So, to close out tonight, let's have a conversation, people. I want to know, how do you deal with parent guilt? You know, um, how do you repair after snapping? How do you connect? So let's have that talk. Y'all can DM me on my IG, Life According to Rick, or leave some comments, and we'll talk about it. So I hope y'all enjoy your Friday. That y'all have a great and amazing weekend and enjoy your Valentine's Day with your loved ones. If you got plans, I hope that y'all be safe, what I'm saying, and whatever y'all do. And we'll catch you guys next time.